Liberals Warren and Sanders unite against moderates' 6 takeaways from night 1 of the Democratic D. Elizabeth Warren gave Bernie Sanders a side hug and an enthusiastic "good to see you" at the start of Tuesday's Democratic debate. And for more than 2 hours, the non-aggression pact between the progressive standard-bearers held steady. Warren and Sanders stood at the center of the debate stage in Detroit, and were united in fending off attacks by their moderate challengers, who strove to distinguish themselves as more pragmatic and more electable than the lefty pair. The other candidates appearing on stage Tuesday were Montana Government Steve Bullock. The rest of the field will convene on Wednesday for night 2 of the debate, which will feature a hotly anticipated rematch between former Vice President Joe Biden and California Sr. Kamala Harris. Hey race, what stood out as the big takeaways from the crowded 10-candidate face-off? Moral signaling through healthcare. Democrats dug in on a meaty debate on healthcare policy, which may have left viewers' heads spinning on the distinctions between a sweeping Medicare for all, a smaller-scale public option, and many variations in between. It was a lengthy but along with laying out policy details, candidates framed their healthcare stances in moral terms, trying to cast their approach as more empathic and righteous than their rivals. For Sanders and Warren, only a government-run healthcare overhaul is sufficient to fix the current system. "This isn't funny," exclaimed Warren, quieting the audience's titter sauce. She challenged CNN anchor Jake Tapper for interrupting her. "The basic profit model of an insurance company is taking as much money as you can in premiums and pay out as little as possible in health care coverage," she added. "That is not working," but moderates said a more incremental approach, one that is more likely to pass Congress, is more humane in confronting urgent need. Klobuchar defended her preference for a public option to compete with private health insurance plans. "That is the easiest way to move forward quickly," she said. Good news/bad news for Delaney. The former Maryland congressman was the first prominent Democrat to jump into the 2020 fray, but has had a hard time winning attention from his better-known rivals. On Tuesday, but Delaney, a centrist, will perhaps be best known for setting up strong zingers for his more progressive colleagues. Going toe-to-toe with his rivals on health care, he mocked them for not understanding the business of health care. "It's not a business," Sanders swiftly. Later, when debating on the best way to beat Donald Trump, Delaney again argued for a more moderate appeal to voters. That gave Warren an opening to make her central campaign pitch that she'd be a scrappy force for systemic change. "I don't understand why anybody goes to all the trouble of running for President of the United States to talk about what we really can't do and shouldn't fight for," Warren said, winning applause from the crowd. Warren's winning one-liners. Warren's high school debating experience served her well Tuesday night. The Massachusetts, on health care, for example, she shut down more moderate rivals, who warned Medicare for all would result in people losing their insurance. "We are the Democrats," she said firmly. "We are not about Trump." And when asked later about racial strife in the country, potentially dicey territory on a night where no candidates of color were on stage, Warren won cheers for her blunt assessment pronouncement, "We need to call out white supremacy for what it is, domestic terrorism." Souped-up Sanders made little impression in the Democratic debates last month, but on Tuesday night, the Vermont senator showed much more spark. While largely the more animated Sanders got attention from his fellow candidates, who noted his forceful delivery. "You don't have to yell," said Ryan. "Throw your hands up," former Hickenlooper said teasingly in a back and forth. When Sanders getting along on guns, CNN's moderators were able to get the Democrats squabbling on health care, climate change, and trade. But on guns, the candidates were united in lamenting the scourge of gun violence and blasting the influence of the National Rifle Association. They were quick to It's a striking illustration of how quickly the politics of gun control have shifted in recent years. No longer are out of sight, out of mind. Biden has consistently been the front runner in Democratic polls. You wouldn't know it from Harris released her version of Medicare for All earlier this week, setting off a round of sniping between her, Biden and Sanders. It didn't merit the 10 Democrats on stage Tuesday night trained their focus on each other, you or President Donald Trump. But the other half, copyright 2019 Los Angeles Times. Visit the Los Angeles Times @ distributed by
Raindrop, truck top, top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. You fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.